Hello, and welcome to another presentation. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about the dangers of smart meters and 5G and what we can do about it. Many people have asked me, how do I tell the difference between a smart meter and the old meters that we used to have? The meter that's shown on the left-hand side has that little aluminum wheel, which is an analog meter. And the meter shown on the right-hand side is a current digital meter, which they are phasing out the old analog meter for the new digital meter. We do not want the digital meter. It has many issues regarding safety, and it also transmits RF signals, which you will find out are not good for you. The socket where it plugs in, it now will be a looser fit because the newer fingers are smaller, which causes arcing, therefore degrades the contacts inside the meter base as well as the meter socket itself on the new meter. Now when it causes arcing, that causes heat buildup, and heat can cause fire. Sparks can cause a fire, but it's inside the meter socket and inside the meter base cabinet, so you would never know. Those are the meter sockets that I was referring to. And you notice it says line, and then underneath the bottom one would say load. They didn't mark it. Line is coming from the power line, and the other bottom terminals are going down to your meter and then into your house or home or business. Now, what I showed you in the previous two slides was a typical meter used in North America. What I'm showing you in this situation is a digital meter, and then I'm showing you what might have been the old analog meter. Again, we can see the aluminum wheel on the one that's on the right hand side, and the other one is completely digital. Now what we notice is those meters, the digital ones around the world, many of them are made by a company called Landis and Gear, and they report wirelessly by transmitting a signal to a cell tower and maybe several cell towers, and eventually it gets to the building authority. Now, when these meters are installed and when they're working, they have a switch mode power supply. And we'll get into that. We went into that once before. And the switch mode power supply causes what's known as dirty electricity. Now, I wanted to get rid of the dirty electricity, and so I built a filter circuit, which you can see in that white box with the on-off switch. And there's 3 wires to it, if it's made for North America. And we simply have a plug that comes in, that's provided. It's wired to a 220 receptacle in your panel box, as well as the neutral wire, and you simply plug the unit in. Now if you move, or if you have 2 properties, you can simply unplug the unit and take it with you. This unit sells for $300 Canadian plus your shipping. Now, I am planning on doing a presentation, and if you order your meter or your filter in advance, then I will bring enough filters so that people don't have to pay shipping charges. One of my customers, Vince Glacerdo, he turned around and he hooked it up in his home, and he was able to get some sense of normality back in his life because the frequencies were bothering him. Now, what I did to verify that my unit worked is I had a dirty electricity filter from a company called Stetzer, and I had a Stetzer meter. Without any filtering of any type, the filter was not present, and the Stetzer meter was reading 470 units. And then I put the Stetzer filter in, and it read 147 GS units. And then I put my filter on, and it was reading 30. The optimum thing here is to try and get the lowest number possible, and any number over and above 50 is considered very harmful and could be deadly. I've seen numbers as high as 1250. So there's definitely a problem, and it's due to the switch mode power supply that's in your electrical meter. It's in all the digital electric meters, regardless of where you're from. This is a problem. These things don't only produce dirty electricity, they also produce RF, because they're constantly talking to the power company for time of day billing. One of the other things that a person can do is they can get a ferrite core, which is the larger picture of the two, and that ferrite core has an inside diameter depending on the size of the wire. And what you would do is you would put one of these ferrite cores at the electrical box inside the electrical panel on each wire, including the ones coming in from the meter, and it suppresses RF noise. And I've shown you a picture in the upper right where it's clamped on a wire. You just clamp it on and then leave it there, and that's it. It's called a ferrite core. You can get them fairly cheaply off of eBay or Amazon. Now, one of the people I talked to has been exposed to RF from a smart meter, and you can see a blister-like burn here and the radiation from this smart meter. I bring this to your attention and you'll see why shortly. Here's another picture. This is caused from the RF from a smart meter. Now, if we look at standard electrical wire, we would need to go down the AWG column to 14 if you're in North America. And you'll notice that it is good for 6,700 hertz, which is the second last column. It says maximum frequency for 100% skin depth for solid conductor copper, which is what your house uses, and we use 14.3 or number 14 wire anyway in North America, whether that's Canada or the United States. And you'll notice the maximum frequency is 6,700 hertz. But if we know anything about the smart meters, we know that they are operating at least 10 kilohertz or more, which means they're switching. And that's the way they control the power going to the electronics in the meter. Well, that harmonics, the wiring in your home is not made for that, and that's why we would put on those ferrite cores to shield that out. It's not a perfect solution, but it's an attempt to solve the problem. Now, in the European countries, they have different plugs. I've shown one on the left, and I've shown one on the right. And I need to know from the viewer, if they're ordering a power saver, if they're in North America, or they use the round plugs, or the other ones that are shown on the right-hand side. The reason being, I have to provide a cord which has the appropriate plug on it, which can be wired to your panel box. You only need one filter per home. Okay? This is from one of my viewers, and one of my people I helped, having a lengthy lawsuit with the utility company over installing a transmitter on our property. Many died and others got sick. The utility filed a motion to dismiss our case, and it was heard on Friday. We have enough evidence to go to court. The equipment used was a 30-day heart monitor, which we got from the hospital, and the hospital prescribed it, and an HF59B, and an NAF 1000R F monitor. When the health symptoms occurred, in other words, when he felt his heart palpitating, he looks at the NFA 1000, which is consistently recording the RF transmissions, and we find out that when the transmissions are detected by the meter, they're also affecting his heart at exactly the same time. So by using those two meters, we were able to prove his case. Okay? And we used that to win a case against the smart meters, and they removed the repeater tower that was illegally placed on his property. This was down in the United States. Now we see here two different graphs, and they come from that NF 1000 meter, and we can see the minimum and maximum values. And if you look into the charts of what's the safe value, you're going to find out that this is way over and above the safe value. And also the bottom line is a time base. If we look at the bottom scale, it says Sunday, and it records every hour between each one of those vertical lines. And basically, this guy is being exposed to an RF signal 100% of the time he's in his home. This is not legally permitted. Under the safety guidelines, when they do the safety guidelines, they base it on a 3-minute exposure. Well, I'm going to ask you a question. If you microwave a turkey in a microwave oven for 3 minutes, are you going to cook that turkey? No. So the 3-minute safety guideline is fine because it's not going to do any damage that you will notice. However, you are being exposed to this 24 hours a day, as the meter readings indicate in these two graphs. Therefore, if you are being exposed to this RF signal, and they say it's within the safe limit, keep in mind that the safe limit that they're referring to is based on 3 minutes of exposure, not 24 hours of exposure. And keep in mind that they might tell you that the smart meter only puts out a small signal. That may be true, but keep in mind that there's 25 or 30 or maybe more meters within that vicinity and other cell towers in that vicinity, all of which are transmitting at various times of the day. This is why legal action needs to be taken to get rid of these smart meters. The other thing that you'll note is that the smart meters and the cell towers are supposed to have a safety assessment study done, and I can tell you that within the United States and Canada, it's never been done. The FCC has gone to court 3 times, and 3 times the court said you have to do the safety assessment study, and that safety assessment study never gets done. Now, if we look at the scale, because I blew up the screen, we can see that the various values, and if we look up the safety value, we're going to find out that we're way over the safety threshold. Okay, and this thing here is done from basically Saturday and Sunday, and you can see that pretty much non-stop this guy's being exposed to an RF signal. In order to deal with this and prove our point legally, because they're going to have their experts and we have to have some form of proof, a couple of different meters are needed. This meter is from a company called Gigahertz Solutions. It's called an HFW 59D, and it's a directional RF detector. Now this will tell us when we find RF, and if we point it in a certain direction, we can therefore pinpoint where the RF is coming from, and we can look up the safe values which are read on that screen. If you only wanted to do this, you have this meter, you could do it. However, you would have to take a photograph of the screen probably 10 or 12 times in a day to prove that you're consistently being exposed to RF. This is one option, but this is a fairly expensive meter. I've given it to you in a European currency, and I've also given it to you in an American currency. It's a fairly expensive meter. There are alternatives. Another meter that can be used is the NFA 1000. This meter has the ability to do data logging and will produce the graphs that I've shown in the previous 2 screens. This would allow you to prove without a doubt that you're being exposed to RF for a 24-hour period. You would hook that up to a laptop or a desktop computer, and there's a certain software that you can download, and then you would run it for a 24-hour period, and you would find out that you're being exposed to a lot higher level than is supposedly safe. Now, we have found companies that when they come out to do the tests for RF exposure, when somebody complains, they notify the power company or the utility service provider, and they will temporarily turn down or even terminate transmissions, so that when they do a test, there's no major problem. It's not showing up because the transmitters and the meter are shut off, so they don't transmit during the time while these tests are being conducted. That, my friends, is fraudulent concealment. By using one of those 2 meters, either the NFA 1000 or the HF59D I've shown earlier, we can prove that what they're doing is not correct. Now, many people may say, well, that's an expensive meter. That's a lot of expense that I can't afford. I've got a solution to that problem, and we'll get to that shortly. If you want a simpler approach to just detect the safe value, you could use this meter. It's a coronet meter. It also reads RF. It's not as good as the other two. It's a cheaper form of a meter, and again, you would need to take pictures of the screen. Now, the data logger one is obviously the best, the NFA 1000 or HF59D. But for those that can't afford it, you could take probably 10, 12, or 14 pictures throughout the day and show that your RF exposure is outside the safe limit, and that's simply shown on a little bar graph on the side of the screen. Green is safe, yellow is somewhat dangerous, and red is like off the charts, get away from it. The last option is a tri-field EMF meter. And again, it gives a chart. It's not as sensitive as the other meters from Gigahertz Solutions, but it will show you that there's an RF or an electromagnetic transmission. And so this meter could be used if you want to detect electricity leaking from your power lines due to the harmonics being produced by the switch mode power supply. Now, we were given a piece of useful information here because this has a warning label. It says this device complies with Part 15 of the FCC rules. Operation is subject to the following two conditions. The device may not cause harmful interference, and 2, the device must accept any interference receiving, including interference that may cause undesired operation. See, that FCC is the Federal Communications Commission, and it regulates all meters. Therefore, if we can find out if a meter is transmitting something and causing an interference, we can then go to that same safety rule, right, the FCC rule, Part 15, and say your meter doesn't comply. Many people have asked me, well, is there a very simple way to just detect if there is some kind of an anomaly? And the answer is yes. You can use an AM/FM radio, and often when you tune the scale either to the low end or the high end, you'll pick up all kinds of static noise and interference that doesn't belong there, and that's caused from the switch mode power supply. Now, many people have asked me, well, is there some sort of a remedy to this problem aside from the meters and taking people to court? Well, the ultimate thing is taking the person or the company to court, but what many people do to get a simple relief from it is they make a mesh screen. I've depicted two versions here, and you use a special conductive screen-like material, or you can even use an aluminum window screen from Home Depot. The trick is not to have any holes in that screen, have it overlap, and then ground the screen to a grounding point in your electrical panel or an electrical plug. And the one is shown for a child's bed, and the other one is shown for a crib. Now, ultimately, you would also want to put a screen across the floor so that any RF that was coming through any wiring that may be running through the floor, underneath the floor, of course, to shield that out. Here's another example where the dining room table is in a screen room to prevent the RF from coming through the walls. Keep in mind that window glass does not stop any RF, neither does most wall coverings. It'll reduce it some, but it doesn't stop it. Now, there is another alternative, and it's to use a paint. It's a conductive paint, and what we do is you paint the wall with this black paint, and it only comes in black, and then you ground it to your electrical outlet boxes so that when the signal hits that, it finds an easier path, and so most of the signal will be diverted back to ground. But you can see from the price of this Y-Shield paint at the time of making this video, it's quite expensive, right? You're buying a Y-Shield EMF shielding paint, and it's 5.28 US gallons, and it's $1,260. Now, that might be enough to paint a room, and if you were in the position of knowing which room to paint, I would certainly go for my bedroom, because you need to be able to sleep, and when your body sees the RF signal that's coming from the transmitter tower or the meters, your body thinks or depicts it as daylight, and therefore you don't get a proper sleep and you get run down. Your body doesn't generate melatonin, which it uses to repair itself. Therefore, that would be my first room that I would deal with, and the other one would be any room that had a smart meter on the back side of the wall. Now, many people will go, well, I don't want to paint my room black, and I don't want to put this tape on my wall, but this is the one alternative. Now, I would ask the viewer a simple question. Why is there a patent for subliminal acoustic manipulation of the nervous system? Whoever filed this patent, patent number 6017302A, should technically be taken to court because they're patenting this technology so that it can be licensed and or used against the population. The patent office should never allow patents to be filed like that, but they do because it's profitable for them. I'm also providing a sticker here that was on the side of a cell tower. It's on the side of many cell towers, and it says here, this is a 5G small cell tower. The signal emitted from this tower basically may be damaging to humans, animals, and plants, and it gives the issues: heart issues, flu-like symptoms, muscles and nervous system issues, and so if fatigue, vision problems, headaches, insomnia, cognitive fog, vision problems, tendinitis, they're all listed on the bottom of that sticker. So if you're suffering from any one of these ailments, and it's been after the installation of a smart meter or a 5G tower in your area, then you may want to take some action. I was provided with a newspaper clipping from a power company who allowed the installation of 5G type equipment on their building. They're a natural gas power producer within the UK. Now, the problem is that there's never been a safety assessment study done for the installation of those 5G masts. There's pretty much no place on Earth, with the odd exception, that you can move to get away from a 5G signal. That was the idea, that 5G would be available everywhere. And there is legal recourse. This is a picture of that natural gas power plant that was provided to me, and you can see there's junk bolted all over this building. Each one of those devices is related to an RF signal. The round dishes, or chances are what they are, is a repeater, directional repeater dish, and the square units are 5G transmitter receivers. Now, when these people do their band exposure quadrant, we see here it says 14E504. Now, if you use a calculator and you get the number too big, it's going to give you a number like E4 because, or some other number, but it's going to give you that because the number is too big to display. But they trick the local councils into accepting that what we're doing is safe, when in actual fact the safe limit is 458, and this thing is way beyond that. It's kind of like an exponent on a calculator, right? Now, we know from that picture previously that we now have three different companies who have transmitters on the side of that building. It's admitted in their report. SureG is the one, JTG is another one, and then Airtel G is another one, and then JTG is another one. So those are all transmitters. Now, if they said the safe limit was a certain amount, let's just say 1 unit, and you were being hit with 1 unit once a day, maybe that would be safe. I'm not saying it is, but let's say for argument's sake that it is. But you're not being hit with 1 unit that's safe. You're being hit by one from SureG, another one from JTG, another one from Airtel, another one from Airtel, another one from JTG, and then all the cell towers, they're all talking to the smart meters, so all the smart meters in your area are contributing to this, which means this scale doesn't mean anything. It's proving to you that it's not right, because those are not isolated. Those could all be transmitting at the same time. And then it says the results show the total EQ was measured at, and it says 1/13/29. I don't know what kind of date 1/13/29 is, because that's from their own report. So it's either 2029 and I just forgot the last 4 years, or this is a BS report. Now here is a newspaper article that was in a Canadian newspaper, evidence from the Canadian thing on the bottom, and it says information about the hazards of smart meters. Now I happen to have all kinds of documents that indicate the hazards of RF exposure. So we can now build a case. Now I announced that I would do a smart meter seminar presentation. And in that presentation you would have received a presentation similar to this one, but now we would go more in depth further about the paperwork and the protocols and the next steps to take if you wanted to challenge the installation of a smart meter or a 5G tower within your area. I also announced that I would be doing a seminar on council tax, and we've went over many of the council tax arguments on my YouTube channel. So in that seminar I would go over it again for the new viewer, and then we would get into the paperwork that has to be filed, or a response that would need to be filed in relationship to paperwork that you may already have. Now I tried this back in December, or last year in October, November, December, in hopes to get something set up for February, because I knew that the tax season was going to start again in April. I'm also announcing that if anybody's interested, I will be doing a seminar in Ontario that deals with property standards and bylaw enforcement. I've been subject to bylaw enforcement harassment for 38 years from my local municipality, and I did a quite extensive presentation on it on my YouTube channel. I would basically go over that and then deal with anybody's specific problems, similar to the other two presentations. Now, my hope was that I could get a number of people together in certain areas to host an event. But due to the lack of response, I'm going to change my protocol slightly and say that if you're interested in attending any of these events, please let me know by email your location and indicate the topic or topics of interest. Please make your information known before March 15th. And due to the logistics of making arrangements, I'm leaving it up to you, the viewers, to make the arrangements to get the people together and find a venue to have this event. You will be responsible for a mic, a projector, which basically converts the laptop to something that shines on the wall. You'll need a laptop and a screen, and it'll be up to you to register the people. I will arrange a flat fee per event to cover my costs of traveling there, and a small fee for my time, based on distance. Obviously, if I'm doing a presentation in a town 2 hours from here, or I'm doing one in England, there's going to be a difference in cost, because I have to fly to England and arrange for travel in a hotel when I get there. If you're interested in this event, you can let me know by sending me an email to the address shown here on the screen. I have to do it this way because when I tried to organize it before, I would find 4 people in one town, 6 people in one town, 2 people in another town. Somebody else said they could get people, but they weren't sure how many people. And it's not cost effective to turn around and do 18 seminars for 1 or 2 or 3 or maybe even 6 people each. We need to collectively get together. And I will be releasing by email the list of the potential towns for these seminars, as I've done in the past. So if you would like to be added to my mailing list, please send me an email if you haven't already, and I will be sending out the information on where these events are shortly after I post this video. So if you get the email, you won't be going, "What's this for?" I'm trying to educate the people and help the people the best I can, but I need you people to help pitch in. Ultimately, it's you guys that want the help. I'm doing it for almost free, right? And I have to purchase those meters that I showed you, the NF1000 and the HF59D, in order to pinpoint and isolate the RF source. So if you are one of the people that's being affected by these 5G towers, my hope is that if I get enough people willing to do it, I can basically divide that cost by the number of people. If I get 50 people, I'm going to take the, whatever it is, $2,300 price tag, divide it by the 50 people, order the meter, do the tests for you guys, because I know how to run the meter, and then document it, and then we can use that along with other documentation I have to help you deal with this problem, hopefully once and for all. And you'll have to learn court procedures and how to defend yourself in court, but your paperwork should speak for itself. Keep in mind that this unwanted RF exposure does in fact cause health problems, as I've shown you, but more importantly, it's an assault on you. An assault is defined legally as any unwanted action. Anyway, if you're interested in pursuing this and fighting a smart meter installation or a 5G tower, please also send me an email to let me know, and we'll find out where those people are and how many are willing to take it on, and then we can disperse the cost among those people. The idea is here to not have one person have to make a huge outlay and buy an expensive meter that they only are going to use once or twice, and that's about it. Anyway, I thank you for listening to this presentation. I hope you found it informative, and I look forward to helping people in the future. Thank you. Have a good day.